So my question to you now, Robert, is
Uh-oh.
what do we as football fans do now that we just lived through? No, so here's my question. I'm sure we'll talk about our teams later, but my question is, do you believe that the Cleveland Guardians losing the first two games of their series with the Yankees is Deshaun Watson's fault? Go.
Yes, correct. It's absolutely correct. Yes, I believe it is absolutely Deshaun Watson's fault, and it's also the fact of that's why you ran Amari Cooper out of town too. So because
I'm so deflated.
Yeah. Well, welcome to my football team, my friend.
Well, maybe by the time we come out of the intro, things will have changed. Let's see.
There you go.
Just remember, everybody has your story to tell. Tell it well. Let this old marketing move.
And now, for your listening pleasure, here's Polizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello, friends. Welcome to This Old Marketing, proudly brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. And I'm Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 450 for Friday. Well, it's October 18th, 2024. And with me, as always, is my pal, my colleague, and a guy who is definitely not the DJ at Trump's latest rally, Mr. Joe Polizzi.
I must have missed something.
Oh, you missed it? Oh, my gosh.
I'm not. I got it. So I want to hear what this is, but I have to tell you, when I'm not on Threads and I'm not on Twitter anymore. I literally just check. I check Facebook and I'm sort of on LinkedIn. I don't get a lot of crazy news stuff. What happened with the DJ?
So Trump is having a rally in one of his latest rallies. I believe it was Pennsylvania. He's at this rally, and he's having him and co-hosted by Kristen Noemi. She's the governor from South Dakota, and it's supposed to be like a town hall. It's a town where people can ask questions.
Sure.
And so they get in they go a couple of questions. Trump's got his usual word salad going on, with the questions, and somebody has an issue, a medical issue, right? It's a heat stroke, basically. They didn't turn on the air conditioning in the joint. I guess they couldn't afford air conditioning or whatever, but she makes the joke. She actually makes the joke that I guess they couldn't afford air conditioning in Biden's economy. It's like, okay, that's a good joke. But anyway, so they deal with the first person, and then another person has a medical issue with heat. And so basically they stop the whole town hall. Trump goes, let's just stop asking questions. Let's just not ask questions anymore. And they start playing music. And he just stands 39 minutes. He stands on stage swaying to music. He's just sitting there swaying to music. Like they're just. And he's asking.
You're making.
I'm not making this.
There's no way.
39 minutes. It absolutely happened.
He basically just danced.
He danced on stage
for 39 minutes.
Occasionally
he didn't talk.
Waving to people. Didn't talk. Occasionally he would say, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on?" 39 minutes. He basically, because ostensibly he was. I guess the idea was he was going to. You hear the cue of YMCA by the Village People, and that's sort of the cue in Trump rallies it's over, right? He's done talking. But they played that song, and I guess at one point, as an aside, he kind of went, "They're not leaving," and they just continued to play music. They played Luciano Pavarotti. They played, it was a string of these like just random songs. It went from Luciano Pavarotti to Guns N' Roses' November Rain.
I love that switch. That's that'll get him out on the dance floor.
Oh my God.
For sure.
It's pretty, it's YouTube. You can YouTube it. It's pretty good stuff.
I'm not going to YouTube it. What is it? What I have seen is
it's good content. That's relevance to this show because it's good content.
Bill Maher was talking about Trump's superpower and said, for whatever reason, that any insanity coming from Donald Trump, he's given a free pass. He's just given a free. It's like,
sure.
And that is a superpower.
He's normalized.
And we all wish we had that. Like we do a stupid thing, but nobody cares.
That's right.
Because I don't know how he does it. It's really, I mean, it's been 4 or 5 decades in the making that he's gotten this far where it's just Donald being Donald.
Yeah, we've become numb to it. We really have. We've become numb to. We just got we got tired of the words unprecedented, right? I mean, it's just
Well, speaking of numb, how was Jerry Jones's birthday? That's what I want to know.
My God,
I felt so bad for you, man. For those that don't know, it was the worst Cowboys loss at home since Jerry Jones took over the team as owner.
I believe ever. I believe
ever.
I'm pretty sure
like
ever at home.
Ever?
I believe it's the biggest loss at home ever. Yeah, it was a trouncing. It was. I mean, to the point where in the end of third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, the Lions were literally trolling. I mean, they were putting, and I'm not joking again here either. They were putting offensive linemen out as receivers. They literally they ran a couple of plays where OL guys lined up in the receiving slot and they threw passes to them.
That's just mean. That's like when a game like Major League Baseball game's out of hand and it's like 16-1 and it's the opposite of like them bringing in a fielder to throw. Like you don't want to waste a pitcher's arm when it's that far out.
Right.
This is even worse.
Yeah. It's worse because they were just out there playing, they were playing backyard football. It was like playing a junior varsity team. It was absolutely god awful.
Silver lining for you. You're still 3-3. You're
True.
only 1 game back in your division.
That's right.
And the Browns are 1-5. And
as
you noted, they're already they've already given up on the season.
Yeah.
They let Amari Cooper go for basically a couple of brownies and a bag of Fritos.
Well, but here's the thing as well, not to get too inside football, but the Browns got, this is another sort of, shot in the ribs to the Cowboys. The Browns got more for Amari Cooper today than we got from the Browns when we traded the Cooper to you. I mean, it's just the hits keep coming.
Well, that makes me feel better. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. There you go.
Wait, it's sad. Everybody knows that now, granted, the Cleveland Guardians, although we lost the first 2 games, the problem was we played terrible. We didn't play Cleveland Guardians baseball. We were down 2-0. I mean, as this will air, the game 3 will already be over, but I'm going tonight. My son and I are going. We're very excited about this.
Yankees are tough. Yeah.
And I'm torn, Robert. I mean, this is kind of a personal issue. I feel horrible about the fact that I raised my youngest to be
a Guardians fan,
sports fan. No, a Cleveland, mostly a Guardians fan.
Yeah.
We were together when Lane Thomas hit the go-ahead Grand Slam home run that basically propelled them into the ALCS. And it was one of those moments you'll never forget. Like we're literally crying together, jumping up and down. But then you go from that to we can't catch a pop-up and it's Deshaun Watson's fault. Like we're literally. And it was because Brian Rocchio, shortstop for the Cleveland Guardians, dropped a pop-up early in game 2. Easy pop-up by Aaron Judge. Could have got his unearned run. And Brian Rocco, coincidentally, is wearing number 4. Who else wears number 4? Deshaun Watson.
And Prescott.
So we have already started a campaign to get Brian Rocchio's number switched because it's just like I've said it many times. It's just like Greg Brady's talisman from the Hawaii episode of Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
We got to get rid of that. I don't know what to do.
Here somebody pointed out to me that there's a very good shot that the Dodgers and Guardians might be in the World Series. So,
well, the Dodgers are up 2-1.
That's right.
So you're looking great. We're down 2-0. Hopefully, by the time people listen to this, it's 2-1.
Yeah.
But the whole city's lost faith. But we love this team. They're overachievers. If you
They
look
definitely
at,
are. They definitely are.
The Yankees payroll is $300 million.
Yeah.
The Guardians is $100 million.
Yeah.
And they have probably 3 times the talent because of it.
Yeah.
We're a small market team. We don't have the means, Robert, like you do in LA, that you can dominate.
We can spend $500 million or $1 billion on a guy who doesn't even play one side of the field.
When a Cleveland sports team does spend money, we don't know how to do it. Obviously, because we spent $230 million on Deshaun Watson, can't play quarterback anymore.
Yeah.
He forgot how to hold the ball. What he does really well, better than I've seen anyone ever do, is fall down. He has falling down. I mean, mastered. You want a negative 4-yard play? Deshaun Watson is your guy. I'm sorry, I could go on. I'm sorry to the listeners.
Yeah,
that they have to go through that. I'm getting texts from our listeners on how bad they feel. I think they're just like, okay, I feel bad for you, but please shut up.
Should we get to our show?
That's all I got.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay, fantastic. Well, we have breaking news that we're going to cover as our big story today, which is, of course, Semrush has now acquired Search Engine Land. So here we go. Software company becoming media company, or media company becoming software. Chocolate in your peanut butter in your chocolate. You pick. We'll talk about it. Then we'll talk about how media trust is at an all-time low, coming to us from a new Gallup poll. We'll talk about what that means for media, content, and possibly opportunities for our brand. We'll talk about TikTok and how TikTok is terrible, and how Robert loves alliterations. Then we'll talk about James Patterson and his move to Substack, and what that might mean for Substack and what it might mean for authors. Yeah, it's a very fascinating move. When we get to our winners and losers, I've got a couple of losers this week, including app makers, social app makers for sure, with some new but not very much covered changes to iOS and what Apple's doing to the new social apps. And I'm also going to talk about content creators and how it's just things are getting a little bit out of hand with the risks that some of these kids are taking.
I heard about that. We'll talk about it.
It's tragic, just awful.
Tragic stuff.
And then Joe's going to talk about Nick Chubb, which will bring him back to football a little bit. But it's like, it's really
it's not a football.
It
is a football, but it's not a football.
Yeah. And then he's going to talk about a review of The War of Art, a fantastic, wonderful, amazing book that I'm very curious to get Joe's take on. When we get to our rants and raves, I am going to talk about, I'm going to talk, I'll talk about AI and what's going on with AI and creativity.
You'll talk about, again.
It's just
you just keep bringing it. You just keep bringing it back.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. It's a thing. You know.
All right, breaking news.
All right, breaking news. Let's get to it. To our first story here is coming courtesy of Search Engine Land itself. Dun dun dun. The headline here: Semrush acquires Search Engine Land. The subheadline: leading SaaS platform Semrush acquired Search Engine Land, SMX, and all of our sibling publications. Basically, a big move of a lot of publishing done by Semrush here, and it opens up by saying Semrush, a leading online visibility management and content marketing SaaS platform, today acquired Third Door Media, our parent company. In addition to Search Engine Land, Semrush acquired all of Third Door Media's brands, including SMX, which is Search Marketing Expo, great event, martech.org and the MarTech Conference, fascinating, and Digital Marketing Depot. So that's a lot of new content and a lot of new websites. What does this mean? Well, Search Engine Land says its mission to inform and educate you on all the latest developments in search marketing will remain the same. They will continue to cover the latest breaking news, share insights, and analyze the latest trends and provide helpful content. And basically, it goes on to talk a little bit about that and basically post the press release announcing the acquisition. So, yeah, I can't say this is surprising at all. I mean, it's almost... This one feels like they've listened to us. This one feels like, because we know a lot of those. We know a lot of those folks.
We know some people over there.
Yeah.
First of all, Noriaki
congratulations.
Ito, Noriaki Ito, a friend of the show, long friend.
Thank you, Noriaki.
Sent this over to us yesterday, and we talked about it with our predictions last year that we thought that more of these things would happen. Of course, I think we've had it in our predictions every year that more of these things would happen. And finally, we're seeing this. Of course, how can I not love this? How can I not, have a shout out back to when Arrow Electronics purchased all those properties as well from Now Informa.
And Hearst
was 35 websites. If you are a brand today and you believe that communication with your customers is important, these types of things should be looked at. And how hard would it be if you're Semrush and you're like, I would like to have the leading event in search engines for search engine optimization. I would like to have the leading event for marketing technology. I would like to have the leading website. Well, you know how hard it would be for you to launch that and do that? Incredibly difficult, especially when it's part of marketing, and especially when you've got, hey, we're not talking enough about ourselves. Where's all that product promotion that we want? We need more ads, those types of things that we all run into. And in this case, you're like, wow, we could have all of it. I don't know what they paid. It wasn't public. I would love to know, but I'm assuming this is a win-win on both sides. The
huge win.
Yeah. The owners of Third Door are probably loving this deal. I'm sure there's a little bit of an earn out as well, but this just makes too much sense. And I'm under the assumption that the readers and the event goers of these events will get Semrush discounts, integrations, right? It's just now the challenge is for something like this. How do you remain sort of the third party of the industry when you are owned by a company like Semrush? That's going to be difficult. It's like it's going to be hard for them to bring in a Hrefs as a sponsor, right? Because they're head-to-head competitor.
Well,
it'll be interesting to see how they deal with that.
But I mean, it will really come down to, can they successfully? I mean, look. The good news for everybody involved now, in terms of the acquisition, is they don't have to be profitable anymore, really. They just have to not cost, so much that it becomes more than a reasonable marketing expense. So if they can continue to stay at or near or even wherever they are in terms of profitability as an ongoing business, then they're doing fine. But to your point, it is likely to cause some consternation with their existing advertisers. I mean, I'm looking at the front page today, and there's a search engine marketing, provider on the front page as a big advertiser who's going to be coming to their events, who's sponsoring the events at SMX. All those things are going to have to be dealt with very carefully. And Arrow Electronics certainly learned this when they purchased, all of the magazines and websites that they did, and they ended up making it a separate division of the company, sort of separate, like physically separating it, and very slowly and very carefully brought it all together so that it was clear that they weren't going to put their thumb on the scale of too much there. But the value of Semrush, just even in the first party data, just even the addressability of the audience that they have with these media properties is, I mean, I'm a subscriber to martech.org and I'm a subscriber to Search Engine Land. I get their emails. And so it'll be really interesting to see how they handle it and how much they leave it alone and how they derive value of it over time. But boy, what a cool move this is.
Arrow's separate entity to sort of separate the church and state of that deal has been very successful for them. So it is a model that could be followed. I think the other recommendation that I would have, you and I've been through this a couple times. Obviously, Lulu just purchased Content Entrepreneur Expo and the Tilt, and they were very cognizant of not messing with it early.
Yeah.
So the advice is, don't do anything for the first 12 months. Don't have anybody even raise a finger and say, oh, they're tampering with it. They're changing the model. I don't like this.
Yeah.
Keep everything the same. Keep all the people the same. Keep the community going the same. And then see how it goes. And then you can make your changes in year 2. That would be my recommendation. And that's probably more of a winning formula.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if they need to change it at all, you know what I mean?
That's right.
One of the things that I've, because I try and occasionally keep up with what's going on over there at Arrow Electronics and what they're doing. And one of the things that I note is it was only just last year. So the acquisition happened, gosh, 8-9 years ago now.
Yeah, I thought it was almost 10, 14
almost 10 years
15,
ago
right?
now.
Yeah.
And it was just last year or the year before where one of the things that they started to note was how they were starting to create custom content programs for Arrow Electronics, right? So they were sort of becoming the content
In-house agency.
Like almost like an agency where they were creating these cool documentaries and those sorts of things. And they were offering that up as a service, by the way, as well, that you could purchase for, from them as part of what they do editorially. But they were noting that, some of the case studies that they did were for Arrow Electronics, which, becoming an internal or, sort of adjacent service for the internal marketing at the parent company. That's sort of the easiest one to do because it's all internal, right? So just literally providing insight through research, right? So here's the topics that subscribers care about the most. Here's running polls and surveys and saying, what color of blue do you like better? Or what, all of those kinds of things where you can derive value out of that addressable audience internally without changing anything externally is sort of the easiest thing to do. And by the way, is not really messing with anything.
No. And well, the other thing is you got to remember that these things don't just happen. You have to set up your part of your content marketing strategy. So should be having a list of, well, these are the companies that if they became available, we would like to purchase.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in, let's say you're at this time and you're looking to 2025 strategy, you should be making that list of those possible companies. And you should be thinking that if you think like a media company, your organic growth should also contain the possibility of acquired growth. Not all the new ideas have to be internal. They could be, hey, we can go buy that newsletter, go buy that podcast, that YouTube channel, that event, those media properties, whatever. And once you get them on a list, then you can figure out, well, how do I get to know those people? Should I go to the events? Yes, you probably should.
Yeah.
Should I subscribe to their stuff? I absolutely should. And when you do that, then you go to the team that you have, your executives who are in marketing, and you say, hey, subscribe to this. What do you think? Have them. And if you do that properly over the next 6 to 9 months, selling something like this isn't so hard because you say, hey, that newsletter you subscribed, really like it, right? What if we own that?
Right.
But you just can't spring that on a marketing department that's never done an acquisition like this. It takes some time, so you have to plan for it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. And by the way, the other way to phase into that is to become a benefactor, right? So go and talk to that publication about how you become sort of the exclusive, right?
More than a sponsor.
Yeah. More than just a sponsor. How do I become a partner with you to support everything you're doing from a revenue perspective and really just become sort of the sponsor for that organization and see how it goes.
Great point.
Yeah.
It's such a great point because nobody does that.
Right.
And media companies love that. When an advertiser comes to them and says, hey, is there any chance that I can be just more than an advertiser? Like what other thing? And they'll always listen to that conversation.
Of course they will.
And a lot of advertisers like, well, no, you can't do that.
Right.
No, you absolutely can.
Right.
Such a great point.
How do I spend the most money with you?
I would like to spend more money with you. You think that somebody's not going to want to listen to that conversation?
That's the Dr. Peter Venkman sort of philosophy there is when someone asks if you're a god, you say yes.
So true. True.
All right. Let's see. Where are we time-wise? Let's go ahead. Why don't we pay some bills now so we can get to our next story?
Might as well.
With smaller budgets and sky-high expectations, growth, well, it's feeling pretty painful right about now. But HubSpot just announced more than 200 major product updates to make the impossible growth feel impossibly easy. Like Breeze, a suite of new AI-powered tools that help you say goodbye to busy work and hello to better work. Breeze Intelligence to give you the richest, most comprehensive picture of your prospects and customers, and reimagined marketing and content hubs to attract and convert more leads and send your revenue soaring. Visit HubSpot.com/spotlight to learn more. You want to follow the hot new podcast Let me give you the hottest one I know. It's Entrepreneurs on Fire, hosted by John Lee Dumas, and it's available now on the HubSpot Podcast Network. Entrepreneurs on Fire stokes inspiration and shares strategies to fire up your entrepreneurial journey and create the life you've always dreamed of. This podcast is for anybody who wants to learn about entrepreneurship. If you like fast-paced and packed with value stories, this show is for you. Entrepreneurs love this show because John raves about successful entrepreneurs, from failures to aha moments to what is working for them currently. You can find Entrepreneurs on Fire wherever you follow your favorite podcasts.
John, by the way, John wrote a really good book called The Common Path, and it's like a journal for entrepreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur and you would like to follow JLD's advice, it's a really good way to organize it into a
nice
book. And
is it sort of
books.
Like lessons learned after so many podcasts, or is it talking with
no, it's the entrepreneurial journey. It's the ups and downs.
Oh, it's his journey. I see. It's his journey.
It's basically, if you are an entrepreneur and you would like a motivational device to help you along your own journey, that's what it's for. It's sort of you write this. There's stories, and then you write things in it, and you write your goals, and you tries to keep you accountable and things like that. It's very. I like it. I have it somewhere here, but I can't find anything in this office. So literally, that's not gonna happen. And here's my issue. So a couple days ago, our attic was just attic's right behind me. Actually, it was getting out of hand because as attics go, after years, you just start throwing stuff up there. And we just started throwing stuff up, and then I'm like, I can't get through to the back of the attic. This is a problem. And so I organized everything.
Yeah.
I'm like,
you got a Marie Kondo.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
And then my wife says, hey, I need the thing that hangs on the door out front for the Halloween. It's like a witch on a broom, and it says, welcome to our house and whatever. I can't find the stupid thing because I organized so well. Now the problem is I knew where it was before.
Sure. When everything was a mess, you knew exactly where it was. Now that things are organized. Well, here's the thing. You didn't document your content strategy.
I did.
Literally.
I should have. Yes, I should. Actually, that's a really good idea. I'm going to go in. I'm going to write, like, here's where everything is in spaces.
Yeah.
And then maybe create a spreadsheet.
That's it. That's it. Well, and there, by the way,
then I won't be able to find
you're welcome for your next week's newsletter topic. How I documented my content strategy and saved my closet and my marriage. So,
you know what my youngest said to me yesterday? We were talking about that Lane Thomas home run, and he said, because he was talking about how tough it is to be a Guardians fan.
Sure,
because it's depressing. He says, you know, that grand slam that Lane Thomas hit. He said, you'll probably remember that even when you get Alzheimer's.
Thanks, kid.
I'm like,
thanks a lot, kid.
I was like, well, I don't plan on getting Alzheimer's, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for caring.
Yeah, thank you for caring.
All right,
caring boy. All right, let's get to our next story here, which comes to us courtesy of Gallup, going right to the source here. The headline, Americans' trust in media, I mean, this is coming as a shock to all of you, I'm sure, remains at an all-time low. Trust in political and civic institutions, highest for local and state governments, lowest for media and Congress. Basically, the article opens up by saying Americans continue to register record low trust in the mass media, with 31% expressing a great deal or fair amount of confidence in the media to report the news fully, accurately, and fairly. Similar to last year's 32%. Americans' trust in the media, such as newspapers, television, and radio, first fell to 32% in 2016 and did so again last year. For the third consecutive year, more U.S. adults have no trust at all in the media, 36%, than trusted a great deal or a fair amount. Another 33% of Americans express not very much confidence. And then it has a graph that's basically just a sad sort of Pac-Man dies sort of graph of trust over the last 50 years.
Exactly.
And then it goes through a bunch of other research. Anything from here, I mean, it very much reminds me of Edelman's Trust Barometer that came out, as it does every year, came out this year and said ostensibly the same thing, is that, you know, we are at an all-time low in trust and as a divided world, really, just, not just in the US, but certainly divided in many parts of the world. So what say you to some of this stuff?
Well, I have a couple takes. First of all, if we believed this to be true, then you would think that businesses have an opportunity.
Yes,
to fill
100%.
in that gap. And we've talked about it many times when you bring up the trust barometer. We're like, oh yeah, greatest time ever to be a business communicator because everything else is down and you can be the savior. But really, my gut tells me that this is BS. Because if you say
you don't believe you don't believe the numbers, or you don't?
I don't believe the numbers. I don't believe the numbers because of this. This is okay. Do you trust? I'm reading this from the Gallup book. How much trust and confidence do you have in the mass media, such as newspapers, TV, and radio? Okay, how old is this question? I get it. I get why they're asking it for the consistency of it. But okay, what does that mean to somebody? When somebody says, somebody asks somebody else, do you trust the media? The answer is no.
Yeah.
But because I know lots of people who would answer that they do not trust in media, yet they have Fox News on 12 hours a day.
Sure.
And they absolutely trust everything coming out of Fox. And I'm
That's
just picking on Fox. I could say MSNBC, I could whatever their New York Times, whatever.
Basically, the number represents the other people's media, right? Not my media, but the other people's
That's
media.
exactly
great
right.
Point.
So it's
That's
completely biased to start with.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is true because, again, I know somebody that reads the Wall Street Journal every day. Do you trust in media? Nope. I don't trust it. It's all the fake news, whatever. But you trust Wall Street Journal? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So media in general is not to be trusted, but media brands are very much to be trusted. That's where I don't know. I'm just gonna call this out. I don't believe any of this stuff.
I think it's an excellent point. I think it's a really excellent point, and it would be interesting to see a study that actually does that, because it's a similar challenge to the, I don't trust Congress, but I trust my congressman, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's which
by the way is in here. They're the most trusted thing is your local governments is the most trusted thing for Democrats, Republicans, independents. I trust my local government to handle things the right way. Right. And then you go down, and the further out you go from being local, they don't trust.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's a great point you make.
Yeah. Well, that has been a thing for a long time, which is, because when you look at the trust levels of something like Congress, and then you try and reconcile that with the fact that incumbents overwhelmingly win every year, you go, how do I reconcile that if I don't trust Congress, but I continue to vote for the same person every single time? Well, then it's clear that you trust your guy or your woman, but you don't trust you don't trust the body of it. And this is the same thing. I trust my network. I just don't trust anybody else's network. Right.
Well, take this to content marketing. So what's the learning from it? So if you have a content brand, so how trusted is that content brand? Well, I don't know. It's how close is it to the reader? Well, how do you get closer, or that feeling of being a little bit closer? Make it individualized. And we talked about it. Don't have the newsletter or whatever come from the content brand or the company. Company's the worst. The content brand's a little bit better than the company. What's better than the content brand? Coming from an individual. It's very, very difficult to get mad at an individual, to be dissatisfied with it, because you're like, oh, it's a human. It's a human. So you see more and more of that. We're going to talk about it on our next episode a little bit when we talk about some of the content marketing trends and strategies. I think that's so critical. So if you take any kind of learning from this type of post, like how do we get closer to the person and make our content creation a little bit more human? We'll have a human involved in that and tell people this is human.
That's such a great point. It's such a great point. That's literally a framework or a template you could sort of just lay over this idea, right? Which is if you just apply the same sort of idea here of industry, then company within an industry, then marketing message or platform within that company, then the individuals within that, the content brand, and then of course the individuals within that content brand. you can sort of see, at the local government all the way up to the federal government, right? Where I don't trust social media. If I asked you, I don't trust social media, but do you trust a platform? Well, yeah, LinkedIn. I trust LinkedIn. Okay, great. LinkedIn, but do you really trust LinkedIn, or do you trust some of the things that LinkedIn does?
Or the 10 people that you follow on LinkedIn.
Exactly.
Right.
That's right. That's
exactly.
Right. So that's a really interesting application for content and marketing to start to look at. And yes, it will play a big role in what we talk about on next week's episode.
There's a really good, I'll put this in the show notes. Sonos, the audio equipment company. Well, they've been going through some tough times lately. And my oldest sent me an article of Keith from Sonos. And Keith from Sonos is the Sonos representative on the Reddit thread. What do you call it? Whatever you call it, Reddit. Reddit for Sonos. So what's happened over the past year since Keith has been involved? Keith is a really cool guy. Keith comments, whatever. It's much, much harder for the people to get mad at Sonos now because they don't want to get mad at Keith.
Right.
It's just really interesting. So if you look at the trust in Sonos, it's gone way up on Reddit because of Keith.
Yep.
It's not rocket science, folks. It's just okay. Well, let's get an actual human being involved in this. Instead of being mad at Disney for charging me so much or whatever, if you had a Disney representative that you were talking, it would be different. It would be much different. So.
Well, it's interesting. One other quick example before we move on. Take this all the way up to sort of big brand, big company. So one of my clients over the last, let's call it 7 or 8 years, has been Capital Group, right? The big financial services company, right? They're like Schwab and, a giant institutional investor hedge funds and, ETFs and the whole thing. And one of the things that they did, this is now going back a few years, but they launched a content brand called Capital Ideas, which was not as the guy who runs that program said. He said, we weren't trying to be the news. We were trying to be, the thought behind the news. In other words, they wouldn't break news. They wouldn't be like, hey, Brexit is happening. They would come out 2 weeks later or a month later with an article about what does Brexit mean, right? Yeah. And they would create all of these it was a blog basically, but they called it it was a digital magazine, and it became very successful for their sales consultants to talk to investors. It was very high quality, deep, sort of content but it was a content brand itself called Capital Ideas. And it became sort of their main sort of point of entry into having conversations at conferences and with, it became a podcast. And then they ultimately started to introduce best practices and all sorts of stuff about investing. And it became sort of this trusted brand. They actually did a research study when they were doing their brand work, and they said, how much do you trust the Capital Group brand versus, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, CNBC, those kinds of things. And as you would suspect, that they ranked right in the middle, right? Then they did a test a few years later after Capital Ideas launched, and they said, how much do you trust Capital Group? Just the subscribers of the blog, and they ranked, like third or something. So it was way over. So they trusted the content brand even more than they did the brand.
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Great example. Nice flex too. I work with the Capital Group.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. It's been a while since I've worked with those guys. They're very sweet. They're a great group.
Ooh, let's talk about my favorite company next.
Let's talk about your favorite company, which is moving on to our next story, which is TikTok. TikTok is terrible.
TikTok, you don't stop.
TikTok, you don't stop. You should be able to do that whole rap. Anyway, the article from NPR, which is what we'll link to in the show notes here, basically, it's got a picture of TikTok on the front page there, as you can see. And it says, for the first time, internal TikTok communication has been made public that show a company unconcerned with the harms an app poses for American teenagers. This is despite its own research validating many child safety concerns. The confidential material was part of more than 2-year investigation into TikTok by 14 attorneys general that led to state officials suing the company on Tuesday. The lawsuit alleges that TikTok was designed with the express intention of addicting young people to the app. The state argued the multi-billion-dollar company deceived the public about the risks. In each of the separate lawsuits, state regulators filed dozens of internal communications, documents, and research data were redacted, blacked out from public view since authorities entered into confidentiality agreements with the TikTok. It goes on to talk about some of the lawsuits and from Kentucky specifically, and then they start to talk about some of the revelations and specifics. What do you take from all of this, because you love your TikTok?
Yes, TikTok is killing us, just to be blunt about it. TikTok
Literally.
is, I don't want to sugarcoat this, Robert.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Okay.
If you have young kids that are on TikTok, it is doing significant damage to them. This is TikTok. What I love about this is TikTok's own research. This is not some study. This is not Gallup. This is TikTok saying, "Oh, we have found that usage of TikTok correlates with a slew of mental health effects, loss of analytical skills, memory formation, contextual thinking, conversational depth, empathy, and increased anxiety. It hurts sleep patterns. It hurts relationships with others. You can go on and on and on. It leads to suicidal tendencies and ultimately death." And we've seen a lot of cases where, unfortunately, there's some kids that have been affected that way. And this is tragic. And we know it. And by the way, what's really interesting is TikTok will tell you how long it takes for them to addict you to it. 35 minutes. 35 minutes on an average of 268-second videos, and they've got you hooked. I guess my point is, it's just like anything else. If you're hooked on drugs, if you drink too much, you're a horrible person and you don't love people, like whatever the thing is that's really affecting your life, this is another one of those things. And you can either make the decision for yourself to do it, it's harming you, or if, especially for kids, it's a problem. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah,
that's why. And I know that. Look, I'm not gonna. I like to go out and have drinks on occasion. I like to go into a casino on occasion. I have my own things that I have to deal with, but I certainly do not go on TikTok, which I think is worse than all of them.
That's where you draw the line.
I'm serious.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you.
I would much rather see my kid go into a casino than on TikTok. Isn't that terrible?
Well, it's interesting, because I think what it brings up is something that's fascinating, and interestingly, I think not dissimilar with where we are with generative AI at the moment, in the early stages of generative AI. So, it's funny, because when the villain first got painted for TikTok, the concern, everybody's toxic freak out, was that somehow China would alter the algorithm to have, pro-Chinese or anti-American sentiment, or all this, basically turn us against each other, right? Sort of very artfully.
Which, by the way, they've done. So whatever.
Well, hold on. Relax a little bit. Sit back a moment.
Okay, I'll let you go. I'm going to sit back and let you go.
But here's the thing. As it turns out, that's a red herring. That's jazz hands over in the right hand corner. The actual algorithm is just to make us, like you said, to make us dumb, right? To remove critical thinking, to really harm people by getting them addicted to this in a way that basically, all the quote unquote benefits or challenges that you listed off there. So in other words, it's not meant as propaganda. It's meant literally to do what it's designed to do, which is kill us, right? And so, the interesting thing to me is when you compare that to what's going on with generative AI right now, I think the biggest threat, and I'll talk a little bit about this in my rant later, but I think the biggest threat from generative AI isn't what's been painted to be the villain, which is, of course, the whole, we're going to create something that's going to make paper clips out of human beings and, have a goal and sort of take over the world, all Skynet style. It's just going to make us all stupid, right? It's just going to make us all lean on a crutch to not have any critical thinking anymore, because we'll just lean on AI to do our, outsource our brain. So it's a fascinating time. I will say this, and I don't disagree with you at all that it's a harm to the public good. The question is, what do you do about it?
You don't partake. You don't. I really. And by the way, it's not just TikTok. I get it, right?
No, of course.
Instagram has done its best to copy everything that TikTok is doing.
Sure. Yeah.
Of course, you can get that on Facebook as well. This is not the only one that doesn't feel like it's sucking out the intelligence from my brain is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The other one is just like mind numbing, like whatever, and I'm going to feel a certain way, and I'll be outraged or numb or whatever the case is. So I don't, right or wrong, Robert, I don't feel like I need to lump like the LinkedIn feed into that. Maybe because it's all business content and communication.
Yeah. Although it strays from it occasionally, for sure. I mean,
but I'm on the desktop. I don't go on the app for LinkedIn and get the feed, like the scroll of dooms. What do they call it? Doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling. Yeah.
The kids call it doom scrolling, or maybe the kids don't anymore. I'm so out of date.
All right. Well, let's quickly move on to a happier topic to close us out for the news anyway, which is going to get to us James Patterson, courtesy of the Wall Street Journal here.
I put up the Hollywood Reporter one just because it's not blocked, but it's the same one. I can put this one up too. It's all
okay.
Good. No. There you go. I switched.
All right. Good Lord. Get him all riled up on TikTok, and he's pulling stories from Daily Variety. Get ready for James Patterson Unfiltered. The article opens up by saying the best-selling author has written millions of words, but he's got more to say beyond books. And on Tuesday is launching a paid multimedia offering on Substack called Hungry Dogs. The new venture is set to offer author and celebrity interviews, as well as a column called Stop the Insanity, which Patterson, 77 years old, don't know why that's relevant, will address topics such as book banning and the importance of education. Patterson said he's found it difficult to get opinion pieces in major newspapers, and when he's attempted to get new projects underway in Hollywood, he has sometimes bumped up against others with strong viewpoints. Strong viewpoints in Hollywood?
I'm shocked.
I am absolutely horrified at that suggestion. Anyway, he quotes as saying, "I like the idea of not having to work for anybody, no editors, no Hollywood producers." He said in an interview, "We can do opinion pieces, and that was attractive to me. I want to do it and do it well and talk about things." In other words, he wants to become a media company. And so it goes on to talk about his bona fides, certainly, and how many books he's sold and things that he's done. I think this is it. This is what this is content creator economy hitting the mainstream, right? Is in a headline, I think. What do you think?
Well, for as much freedom as James Patterson gets as an author, which is probably more than almost anyone else because he is so popular.
Yeah.
Still, he doesn't have that direct connection with his audience.
Yeah.
Exactly. I went to see, I told you I went to see Mike Lupica and him. It was a sold out venue at a library in Cleveland. And he has really amazing opinions beyond writing novels. I personally would like to hear some of those, and he wants to probably talk about some of those things and not have to go through the gatekeeper of media. But I think that the win right now, and this is where I always sort of poo-pooed Substack a little bit and said, I don't like it. It's trying to take our data. It wants to have, I'm really starting to come around to,
it's good.
As, it's something to look at. Not in, I don't know, maybe in replacement to the email newsletter, because you can have it as long as you can keep that data, which I believe they let you keep.
Yeah, I can. I've been a Substack member now for almost a year, and that's where it's where my newsletter goes. I really like it. Yeah,
it's interesting. So yeah, this again continues. And I know Van Jones put one up too. They're getting a lot more celebrities to go to Substack, and it's not just a newsletter anymore. He's going to add video interviews, and
well, they just introduced that capability to have like video and podcasts and all sorts of multimedia stuff within the platform.
Yeah,
The platform
really
continues to get better and better, and it's so easy to use. And you have access to your email addresses. You have access. You can always export your stuff out. It builds you a lovely little landing page for all your newsletters. That's pretty customizable to look like a
what's
nice
the
publication.
just for everyone listening, and I don't know, what kind of pricing are we looking at? Is it reasonable?
I think for the paid version, that's
okay. I don't want to put you on the spot. Well, anyways, I think that for me, and I've been on MailChimp and ConvertKit, which is Kit now. That's what I'm currently on. I think it's interesting to see the options out there for just, hey, I have my website. You can subscribe to my email newsletter on my website. That's my proprietary list. That's the most important thing to me. And then now I'm almost thinking, well, can you mix and match a little bit? Can you do both? Those are the questions I'm starting to ask.
Yeah.
I don't know. We will see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at it. Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. Okay, let's get to our winners and losers, where we talk about a recent winner in marketing and communications or a recent loser in what we've seen there. And you want to go first with your love
I'll go
letter,
first.
Nick Chubb?
Mine is brief. I'll put it up on the screen here. This is an article from Nick Chubb, running back for the Cleveland Browns, on the Players Tribune. If you're not familiar with the Players Tribune, it's basically a media company sponsored by, I think Jeter started it and a couple other ones, where players have a platform where they can be a little bit more honest outside of the media. So Nick Chubb wrote an article called "Cleveland Got My Back." Thanks to my friend Jim Kozak for sending this on to me. It's a lovely story. And it's about football, but it's not about football. Nick talks about how important his mother was, how tough it's been for him to go through 2 almost career-ending injuries, where horrible thing, in the Pittsburgh game last year, you thought he might not ever walk again. And here he's coming back, and he might actually play this weekend, which is amazing. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up as a winner, Nick Chubb is the definition of a winner, but where I think this is important from a content marketing perspective, this is a Cleveland Browns win, because of all the negativity, and I brought up a lot at the beginning of the show for my vehement disagreement with most of the moves the Cleveland Browns have made over the past couple of years. When you get a player that does something like this, like we talked about, the individual and not the content brand, it gives me a little bit softer spot for the Cleveland Browns. This article helps Cleveland Browns. So if you are a brand of any size, B2B or B2C or nonprofit, if you can figure out how to get your employees to do these types of things, it ultimately helps you. And so I'm so negative, Robert, about the Browns right now. And I read this and I didn't feel as bad. It helps.
Yeah,
it absolutely is. It's my experience, of course, but I'm assuming there's another, millions of people who have read this and I feel a little bit better about Cleveland Browns because of what Nick Chubb is doing. So I think there's a learning here, and that's why it's my winner from a marketing perspective, because I don't know if Nick did this himself or the Cleveland Browns communication team helped him do it, but whoever decided to publish this article, kudos to them.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned it, because I never comment on Cowboys blogs. I never, the one blog that I follow pretty closely. It's a fan blog of the team, and read it pretty much every other day when new posts come out, and read the comments, of course. And the comments are like you would expect the, sort of Monday morning quarterbacking to be, everybody sucks, we hate this, blah, blah, blah. So I almost never comment, but I actually commented this last weekend after the shellacking that they took. And what I said was, and I think this is I promise there's a relevant point to what you just talked about, which is my point when I wrote my little comment was, I've known that forever the Cowboys culture has been sort of more Hollywood than football, right? It's always been about the circus, the tickets, the money. There's a reason that they're the number one revenue generating professional sports team in the world. And I've just come to accept that's what, Jerry Jones is going to do as owner of the Cowboys. The interesting thing, though, that feels different this year is that it's boring. They've done worse than make me mad. Like, I'm not mad anymore at the team. They've done, because even in some of the earlier seasons where they were 1-15 or 3-14 or whatever it was, I would be mad, but I would have players like Emmitt Smith doing crazy stuff, or I would have players like, crazy, players doing stuff like, spiking the ball in the middle of this, when Terrell Owens spiked the ball in the Star and George Teague decleated him and, showed some heart and some emotion about the team, et cetera, et cetera. I said, what's worse than this year, that what feels so different, is even when they win, it's boring. They've successfully not made me mad. They've successfully made me not care. And that's the worst thing. So your story is great because it's like they made you care, right? Nick Chubb made you care again. And that's an important thing when you're a fan of whether it's a sports team or a brand or anything.
Yeah, I'm going to the game on Sunday in a little bit of a protest, but I'm going to see Nick Chubb.
There it is.
He's the one person I'm going to see, and I wish him all the best, and I hope he succeeds.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So,
all right, I have two very quick things. One is they're both losers. The first are new startup social apps. So this is the article that we'll link to in the show notes, is a must read for all of you who do apps or do marketing. And this didn't get a lot of coverage, but basically the New York Times story is, did Apple just kill social apps? And is with the newest update of iOS 18, what they have done very sort of quietly is do a tweak. It's a pretty obscure feature. So you'll remember when you joined Threads or when you joined Facebook or you joined really a lot of different kinds of apps that have any sort of social aspect to them at all. One of the first things that happened when you installed the app was that it asked, would you like to sync your contacts? And basically it would get that data and it would either automatically send an invite to them to connect, or it would find them so that you could connect with them. And so whatever it was, it would basically sync with your contacts. Now there are some apps that ask to sync with your contacts for no other good reason than just to have that data. But certainly the social apps were the ones that did that because that's where you would make your connections. Well, they've now removed that as a feature. So the loser here are any new startups that are looking to have that ability, because it's no longer going to be available to you. So
interesting.
The question of the article is basically, did they just kill the ability for social apps to grow at all? And it's a fascinating read, actually. The other loser that I have this week, and the article we'll link to here, is from that editorial juggernaut called People Magazine. But the article itself is horrific. A content creator has fallen, and you've seen these videos, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram, where you see these sort of, very stomach churning videos of people hanging off of tall buildings or, walking across a tall building or a tall bridge. And you're like, it just makes your stomach quease because you're wondering if they're going to fall. Well, somebody finally did, right? Somebody did fall off of a bridge while trying to make a selfie video for social media. And this is but one example of content creators, I think, just sort of getting out of control in terms of, what I see on social media so often these days are pranks that are really ugly to sort of innocent bystanders, to putting yourself into danger, to messing around with police officers, to, all in the name of that sort of holy karma of clicks and views and social cred. And it's getting to a point now where I think it's really getting out of hand. And I think content creators are the losers for it. And I think I just hope that there's some self-policing that starts to happen and we start not rewarding it as much, not rewarding those videos as much as we, the awful pranks and the awful people doing, very dangerous things with cars and with standing on tall buildings and stuff like that, because people now are really truly getting hurt. So it's just a bad a bad thing. So
it's a scary story.
Yeah,
that is an absolute scary story. And yeah, I don't know what the fix is, because there's this yearning by people to be internet famous. And and then they can make a livelihood by doing some of these things. So it's just it's getting out of hand.
Yep, absolutely.
Said the two curmudgeons.
Well, you know,
to stop.
But it's even in you know, my feed now is filled with sort of it has gotten to the point where hyperbole is it's just even false advertising, right? I mean, it's like, you know, the headline is, you know, Kamala Harris wrecked in new interview, you know, and it's some content creator who basically shows a clip of Kamala Harris's latest interview, which is neither her getting wrecked or wrecking anybody. It's just a clip from the interview, right? But the headline is meant to make you click and watch this person pontificate for 5 minutes about how you're just about to see Kamala Harris get wrecked on national TV. And then she doesn't get wrecked. And you're like, but you've now watched the video, right? And so it's just this awfulness of content is just getting to a ridiculous.
You know what I would recommend, Robert?
What's
print,
that? Not doing
newspaper. No, the newspaper. It's very it's
liberating.
There's not a lot of yeah.
All right,
gonna go back in time.
Well, speaking of that, let's get to our rants and raves very quickly here, where Joe and I go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave over something that makes us feel like we're dancing at a Trump rally, or that we're actually YMCA. It's, I mean, when he plays YMCA, it's just
you're almost making me want to watch this video, but I'm not going to do it.
Pretty comedic, I have to say. Anyway, would you like to go first?
I have a very
rave
a very quick rave. And I can't believe I've never read this before. My friend Jim Kukral asked me if I'd read the War. What is it? The War of Art.
The War of Art. Yeah,
the
fantastic
War of Art
book
by Steven Pressfield. And I've been a Pressfield fan forever. And I've read some of his more recent books, but I didn't read this one, which I believe is from 2006.
Yep.
If you are any person that creates things, you write, you do podcasts, whatever you're like, you create something. This book, I feel, is a must read. You and I were talking about it before the show. He talks about something called the resistance, which is inside all of us, but we can't see it, we can't smell it, we can't touch it, but it stops us from doing the great work that we are meant to do.
Yep.
It's a really good, I think, motivational book. The way he describes the resistance, antidotes for getting over the resistance. Basically, how do you build in habits? That's what I got out of it. How do you actually build in a habit so that you do the work? Because you're not gonna get struck by lightning and just say, "Oh, I'm gonna write my novel." Like, it comes from consistency every day, whatever, novel, podcast, newsletter, whatever it is. So, just my quick recommendation. Go get the book by Pressfield. You will not regret it. It's a quick read as well. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It was a book that I read when it first came out, and it truly changed a lot of the ways that I think about it. Because, I mean, to your point, the resistance is such a big part of it, and it's that fear that you have. It's the who am I, right? Who am I to say ... right? Who am I to say something about something, or who am I to write that novel, or who am I to write, it's already been said, or that's the resistance, right? And you just have to get over that, because, as my wife will often tell me, she's like, just because it's easy for you, or it's obvious to you, it's not obvious to everybody. And so say the thing, say the thing, write the thing, create the thing. It's just awesome.
The one thing that I got from it, and I keep thinking about this, is the more scared or nervous you are to do something, that's the thing that you need to do.
Yeah.
If you're scared to write the novel, or you're scared to do like whatever really freaks you out, that's the resistance. Like that's
it. Yeah.
And that's notifying you that that's the thing you have to push through. And if it's just something ho-hum and you don't get nervous or whatever, that's why I love the whole idea. Like when you get out there for a speech, everybody should get a little bit nervous.
Yeah,
you really should. 100%. And that's the resistance you have to break through to go get on.
Well,
stage,
there comes a point, and I promise for all of you who are new to speaking, or new to public sort of appearances, or new to this, where the resistance becomes part of the process. And I mean, and I know it's going to sound weird, but you enjoy it, right? Those butterflies that I get now before I go on stage at Content Marketing World or to a big audience, the butterflies that I get in my stomach that make me want to jump up and down and sort of shake my body and do all those kinds of things. I now enjoy those things. I now enjoy those butterflies because I know that that's part of the resistance. And I know that it's, it actually makes me feel good and creative and gives me a jolt of adrenaline. So
good example.
Yeah.
I like it. Good.
All right, very, very quickly here. So I'm going to pick on a LinkedIn post from a guy that I know, actually, that I'm connected to. His name is Timothy Hughes, and this is what we'll link to in the show notes. And he actually links to a post by a good friend of both of ours, Jeremiah Oyang, who they're talking about how AI is going to kill websites, kill advertising, and basically how agents and AI agents are going to upend everything that we do and, really just change the world. Right. And literally his image here is a robot with a gun pointed at you. So it's like, okay, all right. Dramatic much. So my point is not this post, but although this post is an indicator of it. And this is something I would say to Tim as well, but it's basically, and the post that he links to with Jeremiah, and there's a million other posts out there. And the reason that it's hot for me this week is because it coincides with a paper that just came out from the founder of Anthropic, who very rarely does anything, sort of public tweeting or announcing or anything. But he wrote this 15,000 word sort of treatise or, whatever you want to call it, article or whatever, that we could also probably link to in the show notes if you want to go read it. Paul Reitzer in his podcast did a really great sort of analysis of it. And it basically does the same thing. It talks about how AI agents, in the next 2 years are going to cure cancer and cure the planet of climate change and do all these things. And basically it's wrapped in it's wrapped in this wrapper of the utopian sort of, ways that we would think about sort of what the future sci-fi-esque future of AI looks like. But it's basically generating fear on, FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? What does this mean for my job? What does this mean for me? What does this mean for me? And I'm really just sort of like, I don't like it. I don't like this tack that we're taking because I think it distracts from the net present value of what AI gives, but it also distracts us from thinking about what the future, how we're going to change AI to fit our future, right? It keeps the sort of pounding message coming that no matter what you do, AI is coming to stomp on your neck. And even if it's in this utopian way, right? Even if it's in this sort of, it's going to cure cancer and make scientists irrelevant. They can all go sit on the beach and drink Mai Tais, right? It's like, and interestingly, and this is the part of the paper that annoys me the most from what the founder of Anthropic, it's well researched. And as Paul says in his podcast, which I thought was really interesting, he said, look, he goes on in some detail, and you kind of have to take it because he's one of the guys making this stuff happen. Like he's a founder at one of the most important AI companies that are out there right now. So you sort of have to take it for real. Like he's describing this sci-fi Star Trek world of AI, and you sort of have to go, okay, but then he gets to the part where it's basically, well, how is this going to change humans in the short term? Like, how is this going to change what we do, how we make money, how we live, how we interact? And he kind of just shrugs his shoulders and goes, oh, I don't know. What are you going to do? Right. I mean, literally in the paper, he sort of says, I don't know. This is the least part that I have the least part of information about. Yeah. And it's like, sorry, that's not, you can't cop out like that. You can't cop out and write 10,000 words about how the utopia is going to change climates. It's going to cure cancer. It's going to figure out how to do the economy and billion-dollar companies with no people in it. You can't make those claims and then not follow it up with how it's going to affect us as humans because you don't know. And so it's these kinds of pronouncements about this, I don't think are helping. And I love Jeremiah to death. I think he's such a great futurist and such a visionary. And, but we just have to keep these sort of proclamations of, world-changing efforts. We have to keep that in perspective, right? Because these things take time. These things will be shaped by us. Then they will shape us. How these tools will shape us in terms of our future and what we do. And if we're not careful, we're going to create a future that we're going to create this future without us doing the critical thinking about what role we play in it. And that's, I guess that's my fear. It goes very much back to what we were talking about earlier in the show with my fear isn't that the AI takes over the world with robots that turn us into the Matrix. My fear is that we rely on the robots so much that we sort of just check out of life altogether.
Yeah. It's reminds me, I have to go watch WALL-E again.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the greatest movies of all time.
It totally is. It's a great movie. I love that movie. Oh God, I love that movie. At the end, when he touches and they fall in love and they touch hands for it's
a love story.
Yeah,
it's a love story.
Yeah, it's a love story.
Yeah. So
all right, what do you got?
So we're gonna do a special episode next week because you're gonna be at Content Marketing World.
That's right.
So sad I'm not gonna be there, but at the same time, I'm happy that I'll be in the Bahamas.
You'll be wearing your Bahama shorts.
But I'll be keeping in tabs on you and how things go. So I'm excited for you. And so I'm looking forward to our little special episode and taking some time off. And you're getting your big speech ready, right?
I'm getting my big speech ready, which not unsurprisingly, probably to most of you, contains most of my rant right there. So
I like a good Robert rant.
That's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to be. I'm not going to do anything funky this year. I'm not coming out in a spaceman costume or President Biden. I'm just going to come out and be me. I'm just going to come out and talk a little bit about where we're at as marketers. Yeah.
That's definitely going to sell tickets.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Well, here's the thing. The tickets are already sold. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us. We will see you again next week as I'm at Content Marketing World, as many of you will be at Content Marketing World. So I look forward to seeing and hearing from all of you there. And by the way, until we see you next week, well, just remember, it's your story to tell. Tell it well. We'll see you next week on a special episode of This Old Marketing.
Hey, thanks a lot for making it this far in this week's episode, and thank you all for being a part of This Old Marketing. You can check out all the show notes of what we talked about today at thisoldmarketing.com, and it's also where you can leave us a review or a voicemail. We need those reviews and comments on whichever platform you follow us on. And if you haven't followed the podcast, please go do that and make sure you catch the latest and greatest episodes every Friday morning. We're on Apple and Spotify and all your other favorite podcatchers, of course, but we'd love it if you went over and subscribed to us on YouTube. That's right, YouTube. youtube.com/@thisoldmarketing. We'll see you again next week, folks, with another episode of This Old Marketing.